thing that I keep running into is people who feel not only like purposeless and pointless, but they feel so disconnected and they feel so alone, and they think like we're just this blip of consciousness, which again, I don't know, maybe we are, right?
Nope.
But but there's those types of experiences that give you this isn't it. You know, like this isn't it, and we're all connected, and there is so much more to the body and the consciousness and the soul and the spirit than like we can tap into with these fucking senses. And when you have a moment like that and you get to peek behind the curtain, it gives people, even if they haven't done it themselves, I think there's something to be said about someone raising their hand and saying, I had this experience and I don't know, you know, I don't know what I don't know, but I know something. I've seen something, I've felt something, I've peeked into something. And I think that gives people, for lack of better articulation, a reason to live, like a reason to stay conscious, a reason to like, oh, okay, maybe I'll stay like tapped into this for a little bit.
And I truly believe like you and I probably got on that path because we were those people searching for something more, just like the path of yoga in general, right? And then deepening whatever our pathways are on you know, this journey. But I truly believe that I was able to have the experience because I had zero attachment to any outcome. I think if it was something that I, like most things in life, if I really, that was my goal, like I know it would not have happened. Because
you would have been striving rather than allowing, which I'm like currently learning every day.
So that was the most beautiful thing, is like I really have been like, I had a really crazy meditation. This is really crazy. Then sorry, I'll stop. I was like, I have so much to fill you in on.
Hello and welcome to Breathe or Die. I'm Dani May from Breath Guidance, and today I'm talking with Jessica Mihm from High Vibration Living, and I'm really excited because this is a dear friend of mine who I've had the pleasure of working with for, oh my God, almost like a decade, 2013?
Yeah, absolutely.
Over a decade.
Over a decade.
Okay. So Jessica, will you introduce yourself and just let people know like who you are and what you're all about?
Hi y'all, I am Jessica Mihm. Yeah, I've known Dani now for probably, I want to say close to 11 and a half, 12 years. I think that's safe to say. But I moved to St. Pete about 12 years ago, and my passion has always been in the movement industry. I was an athlete for most of my life, and when I had a career-ending injury, that's when I found the path of yoga. It started with all the movement-based asana classes, and then soon turned into learning the ancient mantra techniques and breath work. And here we are now. I'm almost 40 years old, and it just keeps getting more and more exciting as I dive deeper into all these different little avenues on the path of yoga.
Did you practice yoga while you were doing volleyball, or was it after the injury that you were like, okay, I found it, or now I'm just going to dive deeper into it?
Good question. You know, I always love that question. And I remember my teacher back in the day when he asked us, like, how long have you practiced yoga? And, you know, there's practicing yoga, which was what I was doing. And then there's practicing living yoga. So I would say I was practicing yoga. My first class ever, I was lucky. I lived in Austin, Texas. So it was in 6th grade. And a friend's mother took us, and we walked into a Bikram studio, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, it smells so terrible in here. Why is it so hot? But we toughed it out. I don't think we went back for a while. You know, typical, we were young. And from that time until the end of college, I found myself going into Bikram studios pretty often. So I would say I was practicing the physical practice on a very energetically physical level. And I didn't learn the philosophy or like the deeper roots of yoga until later on in life when I lived in the Caribbean.
So this is something that I love to dive a little deeper into, because I think that every time when somebody discovers yoga, most of the time in the West, it is the physical asana, right? The postures. For me, I think it was more about stretching because I was also an athlete, like runner and skateboarder, and just very tight and restricted. And I remember thinking like, oh, yoga is a bunch of flexible girls and I want to be flexible. So let me start to stretch, where I think maybe other people look at yoga and they're like, I want to do a handstand and that's part of yoga, or something like along those lines. Again, that's an overgeneralization, but that's how I came to it, you know, and how a lot of people have entered into it. But if you are in the practice long enough, you end up finding this is like something different, like something else is happening inside of my body as I'm doing the physical practice. And for me, the breath or the yoga led me to the breath, which is now, you know, my life's work and my passion.
The bread and butter.
Yeah, you know, and what I don't know if I would have been as connected to the breath and breathing techniques without first like my vessel and knowing like, oh, okay, like what's going on with the limbs. So what did you find when you say going down that deeper path of yoga? Like what kind of was your first impression of this is yoga, like how you would define it? And now kind of looking back and saying like, oh no, this is how I would define yoga or how I feel about that relationship with what yoga is.
Yeah, to answer your question the best I can. When I guess I first fell in love with yoga because of absolutely the physical nature. I had a career-ending injury. I played college volleyball. I had a major tendon transplant in my elbow. So the physical practice is what continued to pull me in. It was like, it feels so good to move my body. I was very kinesthetic. It was like the way that I was able to release. At the time, I didn't know that I was like releasing and moving emotions, right? Didn't have a clue, right? I didn't understand that I was recalibrating by using my breath. I just knew I felt good, and that's it. It's as simple as that. I just felt better after taking yoga classes. I did not understand anything behind it. So as I deepened the journey and I just kept studying and I really started nerding out with anatomy, I started getting into the energetic anatomy portion. So understanding how the breath was changing me neurologically, understanding how the vibration of sound was changing the cellular structures of my body and my DNA. So I would say now, the main thing that I focus on, or what yoga is to me, is truly, I've come from like the eightfold path, so the Ashtanga lineage. So when I was able to learn the philosophy of yoga, the yamas, the niyamas, which are we see that through many different things and many different religions and, you know, all those kind of things. But living the yoga and trying to be a better person is when it started really changing for me. So working from the inside out on bettering myself, how I handled stress, how I take care of myself on all levels. So it became less of just physical movement on the mat and more of how I handled stress and understanding how stress was occurring in and out of my body, having to figure out the tools such as mantra and breath work to be able to move that stress from my body. And I think that might have been a really long-winded answer, but yeah.
It makes me,
if that answered it.
Yeah, and it makes me think of, I get a lot of students or practitioners or people who are maybe like piqued their interest by yoga, but they think it's a religion. And then some people are saying, okay, yoga is a religion because you go deeper. And then other people saying, no, yoga is a way of life. It's a practice. It's an exercise. Where do you stand on that? If a student says, hey, I have certain religious beliefs and I'm afraid this is going to contradict.
Good question. No, I believe that yoga is truly a science. It's a science. It's not, you know, no matter what religion you are, even if you're atheist, you can practice yoga, right? So your belief system can still fit into it. I think it's just giving us the tools to learn how to understand and navigate ourselves on a physical, energetic, and emotional level. So
when you first started teaching, and I don't know when you first started teaching, but I know when I first met you and you were teaching, I remember you being known as like this amazing anatomical cueing instructor.
Oh, thank
where you would get us into a position that everybody does, let's just say hands and knees for cat-cow. And like you would say things that would bring my conscious awareness into parts of my body that I'm like, oh, that's different, right? It's the same body, it's the same posture, but the way you articulated it was very anatomical and how you had us move from those positions. Now I know that you've kind of, you're moving more into mantra and sound healing, and you've had a different kind of, how you were saying, like energetic relationship with those movements. So can you kind of speak on, for someone who maybe doesn't really understand what that means in the sense of energetic, like how you said changes me energetically, like neurologically speaking, moving through the stress, moving through the feelings. I think there are some people who, of course, totally understand that, have felt that viscerally, intangibly, but there's probably some people out there who are like, what the hell are they talking about? You know? So how could you maybe dumb it down in a sense of saying, like, this is what you're doing or what you're trying to deliver or even teach people, because you teach yoga teachers, you know?
Yeah. So I guess my what I'm trying to share, teach people, and this is nothing that I've made up, right? We've had people for thousands of years sharing the knowledge, and we've also due to modern exercise science, we have this new age of all the technology where we're able to understand the brain and the body and movement better. What I'm truly trying to teach people is to empower themselves and give them the tools to be able to take care of their body and understand what that means, as simple as you can change the way you think. You can reprogram your negative biased brain. You can reprogram the way that you breathe, right? You can reprogram the physical body on the asana or in your asana practice on the mat. And it depends. There's so many different paths. So if you start with the physical yoga and it's just to start to solve your back problem or learn how to breathe better and, you know, be able to use your diaphragm better. Is it learning the tools to be able to sleep better at night, or how to find a confident voice and, you know, in your work industry, and, you know, setting boundaries that are energetically beneficial to you? Like all of these things like actually tie into yoga and learning how to have this like showing up for yourself, having the tools to be able to use to continuously show up for yourself. One of my teachers always said, and I mean, this isn't, you know, this is again passed on, but yoga is truly about learning how to ride the highs and lows of life. Like it's difficult being a human. And I think yoga, being the science of the mind, really understands that and set this template or structure to be like, hey, these humans have been doing this for thousands of years. Like being human is hard. Here are some of these tools. And the tools are up to you. For both of us, it started the physical tool of the body. And some people, that's where it'll stay. And that's beautiful and that's fine. And then some people get more curious or have profound experiences that pull them into these other little paths, such as incorporating instruments and music and learning deeper about the vagus nerve and how music can affect that and help, you know, calm your parasympathetic nervous system. Or Dani May being the breath wizard that can teach you all these different breath techniques for truly like different desired effects. Same thing with mantra.
We're multifaceted, right? And I think the practice itself is so accessible and approachable from what I like to think of as like 360 degree of perception, right? Or perspective. Like you're a piece of it and you're coming at from one angle and one degree, and I'm a piece of it and everyone else from all of the history of, and this is something too that I think is important to touch on, because I think so many students are like, I'm going to be bad at yoga, or I don't have a voice for mantra, or I don't understand the breath or the anatomy, or there's all this
neither did we when we started.
Right? Or all this,
and we're
like,
still learning. Stuff. Yeah, we're still growing.
But also you add to the canvas of what yoga is. And I think that that's so important for people to realize, is that it's not just us learning and educating ourselves, but it's playing, it's being exploring and playing and realizing there's a way that somebody has been teaching a asana class or a pranayama class or a sound for years and years and years, decades, centuries, whatever. And then somebody comes in and takes all of that information and says, oh, I'm going to articulate it or swing it into this way that it shines a different light on a different angle that like people haven't felt before. Or maybe they have, but they hadn't felt it in that way or thought of it in that way.
Or you were able to use different verbiage that landed better with somebody. You know, you could say the exact same thing as somebody else in a way, but the way that you're able to deliver or say, or it's the right time, the right place, the right energetic match, it just lands better. And
I think that when you and I feel, have had this conversation on different avenues in the sense of quality of instruction, right? And, you know, commitment of practice and all of these different ways of deepening our understanding and our connection to ourselves, our yoga, our life. And I always like to say that when I teach breathing techniques, every breathing technique has a particular time and place it's best suited for, right? Because so many students or facilitators say, this is the only way. Like, if you're not breathing this way in this style, then you're doing it wrong. And it's I
feel the same with asana.
No.
You can use the same pose and apply different effects and different curvature of the spine or the pelvis, depending on what you need or somebody's injuries, or what are you trying to wake up and energize? Are you trying to calm and relax? So yeah, absolutely.
But thinking of too of the practitioners and facilitators who maybe don't have as large of a scope to understand this approach or curvature could cause injury or damage or harm. And I think that that's where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you and I get a little like, how do I say this? Like a little like intense in the sense of, hey, like, don't go blindly into the practice. Like, explore, experiment, add your own flavor to it, but also educate yourself so that you are learning from all of these people who have done it for so many years and in so many ways and made mistakes, so that you can understand not only how to use it to empower you and make yourself better, but also how to avoid harming yourself or other people or something like that. So that's something that I'm curious how you navigate in the realm of, because you're a yoga teacher, trainer, and you train a bunch of amazing YTTs. And I'm sure that students come with preconceived notions of how it has to fit in a box, but also maybe how they don't like the box. And I feel you're one or the other. You're somebody who really comes from this approach of how do I do it? Give me the blueprint and I want to copy it. Or I don't like any of that. I just want to play and do the things and make up my own sequence and so on and so forth. So I think what I'm trying to ask is, like, how do you give people both the understanding of like, hey, we need to learn and we need to be educated and we need structure and science, but also we need to have that freedom of playfulness and like uncertainty of how to create our own connection to it.
I do think we're so similar with that. I mean, I think in any subject, the more you learn, the more you realize, or you get humbled to realize, like, it's just the more you learn, the more you know you still have a lot to learn, right? So when it comes to trying to share the viewpoint that, not to put yourself in a box, everybody is not built the same. They should not look the same, but also we are not energetically the same. We are not emotionally the same. You didn't have the same interactions that I had that day. You didn't have the same sleep cycle. You might not have the same lifestyle. So I really try to empower people. If we really want to use yoga as a medicinal tool, then it has to be subjective. So whether it's breath work, whether it's the mantra, whether it's the physical posture, empowering people to actually empower themselves. I can shine the light on these things, but it's up to you to understand, like, what's going on in your pelvis and your low back and the curvature of your spine. Or when you do these movements, is there pain? Is there not pain? So that you actually start to realize, like, your curvature of your back is different than mine. So like our triangle poses should look different. Do you eat the same diet I eat? Do you need the same vitamins and minerals that I take? No, like that's how I like to look at the practice too. So now it does take a long time to on the path, I mean, you know, to find a trustworthy teacher and to really learn what feels good, what doesn't, because it takes what you and I keep trying to preach, practice. The only way you can even know is self-study. So that's svadhyaya, you know, you have to study. You don't have to take our word for it, and we don't want you to. We want you to use the tools and practice them yourself. And that ties into the where, you know, teachers passing down the same knowledge and then tweaking it, because you might find out that it's actually, you have a better way than I was even capable of showing it for your body, which I hope so, you know, only you know best. And that ties in really with what we do with the functional movement part of my teacher trainings, is just showing how truly unique everybody is. So how can we put everybody in a tiny little box? We shouldn't. And I think that yoga is evolving more, or the asana is evolving that way a little bit more, because exercise science and functional movement is starting to become more on the forefront in the yoga world. But hopefully that answered the question. I could talk about that forever.
And I think it's a balance of application, of applying the practice that somebody's educating you on and challenging it. You know, like, always. Is this for me? So when I
know you did that. I know I still do that.
But some people, I think, don't have the confidence, right? They either don't have the confidence to challenge what they've been taught, right? And see, like, is there a better way? Is there a different way? Yeah. Or I also think that some people just don't like authority. They don't like listening to someone else telling them what to do. And so they're like, oh, I'm not even going to try that. Or on the back end of that, they are like, I just want to get to the handstand. I just want to get to samadhi. I just want to get to this fancy thing, experience, state, shape that I've heard about.
Can I pause you for a second? Yeah. If there's any advice that I can share, because I always say that, like, I made all the mistakes. I always tell that to my teacher trainers. I'm like, trust me, I made all the mistakes. Almost every single one. So I like try to create a path where you can create a little less mistake. But one thing I know on this path is, and I don't mean so like esoterically as the ego, but like when you're really driven by ego, like all you want to do is the handstand. All you want to do is reach samadhi. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Like all of my breakthrough moments came when I was like, and just surrendered. And it takes time. Like you will hit a wall, whether it's a anatomical wall, a spiritual wall, an emotional wall. Like if you are forcing it, if you are pushing it, if you are not surrendering and just putting in the work, I've learned it's just like the lesson will just stay right in your face until the lesson is surrendering.
Let's dive into that, because as soon as you said that, my body was like, ooh, because every breakthrough I've had has been in a breakdown. It has been, and that's not to say when things are great, I'm not progressing, you know?
Of course.
But usually
there's beauty in the breakdown.
Yeah, but we don't want to. I don't want to. I can only speak for myself. I think I worry a lot about looking like I don't have my shit together, or looking like I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm very afraid of being incompetent or incapable or whatnot. So I am that type A that's like, I'm going to strive, I'm going to strive, I'm going to strive. And then something happens that just is like, you aren't getting it. Like you're not understanding that yes, life is striving. Yes, it's these high peaks of mountaintops of beautiful views, but you have to go on a journey of also going into the valleys and going into these breakdowns and understanding that life will never, ever, ever be this picture perfect thing of you being put together all the time, no matter how hard we work, no matter how many years of the journey we're on, because we at least I can speak for myself. I relearn the lesson.
Absolutely relate. I've learned some lessons. I was a, straight A student and moved through them. There's a lot of lessons I am still trying to figure out and learn. So,
So how do you tell someone when they're reaching that breakdown, right? Or the breakdown is coming and maybe they don't even realize it, but they're just elbowing their space on earth and their identity and claiming like, look at me, I'm doing so well, or I'm trying so well, and that's where I want to go. And they're just on this mission that anytime life is trying to tap them on the shoulder to say, hey, slow down, relax, take a breath. How do you, because I think for me, the only way I realized it was like the rug just got pulled out from under me. And now, after so many times of this yanking, I'm learning to, okay. But how do you communicate that to somebody who maybe just won't allow themselves to chill?
That is such a tough question to answer. I don't know if it's possible to really show people that, and we can communicate the best we can. But again, it depends on people's learning styles. It depends how good people are listening at the signs and signals that their body, their mind is giving them. And I'm very similar to you. It starts with having the rug pulled out from under you. And then maybe it starts to be the rug has been pulled out of you or under you multiple times. And then finally you get to a point where you're like, I don't want to be here again. So what are the signs that started happening? You know, how did I feel? What's going on in my life? Am I working too much? Am I not setting social boundaries? Am I not getting enough sleep? Whatever, I'm just making things up. Whatever it is, you start to see patterns. And the older you get and the more, because of experience, right? The more time you have, the more you can see the repetitive nature of patterns. So I don't think it's necessarily something that I wish I had sage advice, but I truly believe it's different. It's, to me, not giving people advice on how to navigate or not have to go through that. It's, are you going to show up for yourself and do the work when the rug is pulled out from under you? And that's where yoga comes in for me and provides those tools, because the rug is going to be pulled out from under you. We're human. We're living this human experience. We get to enjoy the highest of highs, and yoga really teaches us that concept of like impermanence. So like non-attachment. If we always attach to the high highs, then of course we're going to have disappointment. But I will tell you, the most beautiful thing that I have been able to learn in life that makes it really easy to navigate crappy times now is when I'm in a really low place. Like when, a year and a half ago when my mom passed. And then shortly after my soul dog at 15 years passed. As terribly painful as that was, I was able to be like, it's actually not permanent. It feels permanent because death is permanent. But the deep heartache, the sense of loss, that sense of not being able to move forward, like I knew that was not permanent. And thankfully, yoga was able to give me the tools to recognize that, to find, when I would be anxious or sad, to be able to be like, I'm feeling this way. How are you breathing? What are you thinking about? How did you move your body today? How are your thoughts? Like, how are you speaking to yourself? So, yeah.
It makes me think of the flip side of people who want the permanence, like they romanticize the valleys, they romanticize the pain, they can't let go of it, and I've definitely been that person sometimes where I'm like, I'm going to dishonor my loved one if I let go of the grief or something like that. But also, in the sense of non-permanence or impermanence, the commitment to the practice, right? When you said doing the work, it makes me think of so many students that I have come to me in search of breathing techniques. And again, like breathing techniques to help them sleep or to help their asthma or to just feel more connected to themselves. And the students that continue to do the practice and the work and explore, like they go off into these magical lands of, adaptation and advancement and just really connecting to who they are. But then there's so many students, and I think it's just, and I've been, I've been guilty of this as well, of the way our world works, of this instant gratification, like, whether it's breathing techniques or yoga or a diet or an athletic pursuit or
we're all guilty of that.
Yeah, we're it's not working. I want it now, so I'm not going to continue to keep doing the thing. So thinking of like, okay, nothing is permanent, but also if we don't continue to find that commitment to the practice of impermanence itself, but also the practice of like continuing to allow the balance of allowing and striving, of going for the practice, but then letting the practice work. Like, can you speak to that?
Right away, Yoga Sutra 1.1 is like, beep, beep, beep. Like, now is the time for yoga, right? So I just truly believe that, and I'm, like I said, I've taken the long route on everything, so, and everything's different. You plant seeds, and some you water and you prune and you fertilize and you take care, and every day you're watering them, and other seeds you're like, and then maybe you come back to them. Maybe it's been years since you come back to them. I can relate to that on all avenues of the different paths of yoga, or even just things in my life. But I hate to use the word faith, but it's where what is coming to my mind right now. But it's truly having the faith that even when you think you are doing nothing or so little and it cannot create change, those little teeny littles add up. and they will. It just, when you're able to look at things in hindsight, those are the beautiful times when you're like, wow, you know, it only took 20 years, but man, look where I am now. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like 20 years now that it's 20 years later. Yeah. So it's just keeping the faith, and it's really beautiful. That's why it's nice to have a community of people too, or mentors. You know, I remember, I don't know why I feel compelled to say this, but we kind of talked about at the beginning how I started with like not that I'm not like very anatomical now, but like very anatomical. And now I'm very into like mantras and sound healing. And I'm into the very just kind of like esoteric, get you to drop into your parasympathetic. Like, I just feel like I'm just like mama bear energy, and I just want to like hug everyone and let everyone feel good. And so, you know, I'll help you with the handstand too. But I'm like, can't we do the other things? Yeah. I guess just trusting and surrendering that things are going to work out, and knowing that it's nice having mentors, because it kind of, if you're a person that needs, like, I think I can speak for Dani too when I say this, like, I was the same. We've always been the practitioner that is like, yes, I'm fully into this, but like, also I'd like some tangible evidence or proof, or I'd like to feel this. Yeah. It's really nice when you have trusted mentors that they kind of have lived the life. You know, they live the life. They eat, sleep, breathe the life. You can feel it. You don't have to question, you know, because there's no questioning, right? I think there's a lot of people that want to desperately heal, and there's a lot of charlatans in this industry, but when you know, and when you're able to find those mentors, it's just proof that if you stay on the path, you will get there. You will get there. And also you'll fall off. Yeah. And then you'll get back on the path. Yeah. But I have learned that I've never gone to the very starting point as far as it comes to like falling off, you know, getting the rug pulled out from under me. Every time I've been able to progress, whether it was like how I handle my emotions or my anxiety, how I bottle things up, I feel like every single time I've had like a recalibration, I never go back to where I was. I have this like knowing, you have experience, you have this sense of knowing, like you're gonna be okay. Like, I can't tell you when you're gonna be okay, but you're gonna be okay. And until you're not okay, here's beautiful tools and a community that will hold you up and support you while you do the work. Nobody can do the work for you. Like, you have to do the work. But like, you're gonna be okay. And I think you and I both speak for lots of valleys and lots of peaks. And even there's been times where we talk and we're like, everything's great, or like, you know, it's like, oh man, it's not doing well. And then, you know, we won't talk for a while, and then we get together and we're able to fill each other in. And it's like, I was in another low, and I've been hibernating and taking care of myself. It's like, you know, I'm going to be the first person it's not like we're sitting here like, oh, we're never sad and that things never happen to us. But thank God we have an arsenal of tools to be able to help us. And back to the question, many questions ago, that's why I'm passionate about sharing yoga. It's just, we have to do the work ourselves and really put in the work to help ourselves. And that's the most radical form of self-love, in my opinion. Like, you have to love yourself. You have to take care of yourself. And you want to show up and take care of other people. It really starts with yourself.
I have like this tree of basic principles that I'm like seeing in my brain. And if I really boil it down to, if somebody asks me like, what's the point of existence? Like, literally big, major, primary question, like, why are we here? And I always just say love.
It's like, to love.
Yeah. Like, I literally can't boil it down to any other word that I resonate with than is to love. Right. But then, like, as we boil down, like, if love is the star on the Christmas tree, you know, like you boil it down, or you build onto it, like the layers of our consciousness and what we struggle with or what we identify with, is thinking of, okay, well, how do I believe in love? How do I trust love? How do I, when you said faith, right? Yeah. I'm thinking of belief, I'm thinking of hope. Yeah. And this is not related, but it's the thing I always come back to. I grew up skateboarding. So like, all these kids in the neighborhood were on skateboards, and I'm seeing them do these really, in my opinion, cool things. It's like they're like floating through space and doing crazy stuff. And I remember the first time I got on a skateboard, and I busted my ass 200 times in a row. And I remember thinking, if I had gotten a skateboard in a vacuum, I would think there's no way that I'm ever going to reach some kind of fun or some kind of passion or some kind of feel good with this instrument, with this tool. This is a shit show and no way. But I had people that I was looking up to and that were living the skateboarding life to do all these things. And I learned.
They were like, we've been there.
Yeah.
You've been there.
And they were very like, oh, cool, you have a swell bow. Oh, cool, you've sprained your ankle. Oh, you've busted your face. Like, and nobody, and I think this is the thing.
That's such a good analogy.
And I feel really so lucky. I feel so lucky because it was all boys in my neighborhood. So I didn't have any girls to be like, oh, that's not cool. Your knees are all skinned. Or that's not pretty. Or that. So I never had, and I was an only child. So I just didn't have that influence. I had the, hey, try again.
Yeah, dust it off.
Yeah.
You're
hey,
okay.
Hey, try again. You're gonna get it.
Yeah.
You're gonna get it. Trust that you're gonna get it. And that just set me up, I think, in so many avenues of life.
Can you imagine if everybody had that?
Like, but you have to get skinned knees. You have to like get injured.
No, but I mean, can you, like, you know, I feel like that's, if you and I had a job, that's our job.
Yeah.
We're the little neighborhood boys that are like, you're gonna be okay.
Yes.
You know, put a Band-Aid on it.
Yep.
Here it is. I know it hurts. We're not downplaying that. Like, you're missing a tooth now. You got a scratched up elbow, your ankle sprained, but it's gonna get better. Like, And it's going to take time to heal that ankle. And it's going to take time for this wound to heal too. But like, you're going to get it. Yeah. What a beautiful analogy. That's perfect.
I remember the first time like I did like an ollie, you know, or the first time I was able to like skip my board from side to side, like those little moments of, it is real, right?
It's
like,
real.
It's for like this like love,
all your faith, like, right? It's real. It was real. I could do it all along. Here it is.
And I think the last thing I just want to say on that is like, if you don't have someone who is living the life, right? Who is a skateboarder who has been bruised and broken, or a yoga teacher, or a breath instructor, or I don't know who you're following or what you're trying to learn, but find people who have really skinned their knees and hurt their ankles and also doubted, like, am I ever going to get the ollie? Am I ever going to be able to drop in without busting my face? Or, and that, because I was a vert skater, like I get the street, but like vert was like when you drop in for the first time, the amount of faith and trust and experimentation you have to have.
I'm like, whoo, girl.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's awesome.
So I love that, like, because that's really what I think I am. I think I'm somebody who's like trying to get people to believe in their breath. Like trying to get people to believe this is for real. This works. It's not a gimmick, you know, but it's also
not pseudoscience. Like,
but it's also not just this like, oh, here you go and you're good. Like you have to do the work.
Yes, absolutely.
You
have to repattern. It takes time. It takes time. Yes.
But I want people to believe so deeply that they're willing to continue to do the work. So they have those magical moments. Because once you have a moment, you go, oh, okay. Now I know. I just remember the first all. I just remember like they're serious. Like they know what they're talking about, you know, and so
I feel the same way. I mean, I think we're both so passionate about sharing this too, is because I think what makes you special, and I try to be vulnerable in this way too, but to be like, we're not sitting here acting like this was an easy road or we have everything figured out. Like, I know you, like me, still are like soaking up everything you can, like always still learning, like constantly, like you want to, you know, again, always keep learning, always question everything. And then the only way to really get better is to like actually put the work in and sit with the work. And the work doesn't, like you said, happen overnight. Like it takes time. And like back to the watering the seed analogy, like sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes like I remember on this path, like seeing people like have these experiences or these just beautiful shifts. I mean, it could seem like it was spiritual. It could seem like it was just anatomical. They're like, I've been working on a press handstand for 10 years and they just come in a week they're pressing, you know, but it's like some people just, you know, they get it faster than you, and it doesn't mean that it's not there, it's not real, or you're not going to get it. There's obviously some piece that you're missing. Yep. That, you know, that's where I'm like, get curious, go search for more teachers, you know, go search for multiple paths. Maybe there's different things you combined. Like, I think you and I are a very holistic approach. Like, when I was young, I always remember looking at my older mentors, and all my older mentors were big into mantra and sound healing and like the very passive practices. And I was very in at that time of like, give me the arm balances. Like, you know, I feel so powerful and strong. Like, I want to be upside down. I want to be in one hand. And it's funny now, after these like 20 plus years of this shift, and now I'm like, give me the sound bowls, give me the passive practice, because as my body has shifted, like, I'm just going inwards. Yep. Like, I love this body. I love everything it's done for me. But I truly wish I would have understood how I could have regulated my nervous system even earlier than I did, but I wasn't ready. Yep. So again, my path started physical. It gave me so many benefits. I would never be here today if I didn't. But having the faith and not just giving up, or, you know, staying on the path, whether it was breath work, mantra, meditation, all of those things, I consider those all different paths and all different little seeds that I've had to water. And, you know, it's funny, asana is in the background now. Yeah. Like, it's always there. I love it. And I understand the importance of that was my gateway. So like, I know that's how it got my attention. Like, that's how I would like to still, like, you know, lovingly get people in. But I think the neatest thing about doing a teacher training or a breath training with you is when people come in and realize how much deeper it is than just doing a physical posture or just breathing, right? Because we have these preconceived notions of like, really, what's the breath really going to be able to change? Or like,
because it's so subtle, you can't see it. Like, that sound vibration, you can't see it. You can't measure tangibly with like the angle of the handstand or whatever it is, what it's actually doing. Yep. That's, I think, the most difficult part is getting people to understand. It makes me think of my grandmother, who, she doesn't seem outwardly as this crazy, strong, powerful presence, right? That wouldn't be your first impression. But the more you get to know her and the more you get to see the ripples of what she's done throughout her family, like the amount of grace this woman has and common sense, like just things that aren't looked at as these big, powerful characteristics. I'm like, that takes so long to cultivate. How is she able to just magically let this, you know, family situation slide off her back and know how to deal with it and know how to talk about it and know how to just self-regulate and move through and carry the whole family, you know? And that's what it makes me think of the breathing techniques, the sound, the vibration of mantra, the subtleties of practice, that if you can't see it, sometimes you doubt that it's working, or sometimes you doubt that whatever is happening. I'm curious, because I know that you're a free diver. And I know that you know about breath and about breathing techniques. When you think of your relationship to the breath itself as both a practice, right? But we've talked a lot about energy and that subtlety of it. What would you say is the thing that makes you believe in your breath? Like, what either experience or practice or belief you have around respiration that makes you feel, oh, this is a subtlety of empowerment that I can use to X, Y, and Z, you know?
You know, to me, I guess over time, I've learned that like my breath gives me almost like a, you know, I joke, but like, I'm not joking, like a superpower for whatever I need. Is it, clarity? Is it confidence? You know, for free diving, when I'm spearfishing, that was one of the neatest elements. Is my now husband, when we first started dating, you know, I grew up in the water, and I was a fish. We were always in the water. but I had never done spearfishing. So soon as I started spearfishing and diving, like it was like a ball of fear. So I was like, oh my gosh, like Jaws is gonna get me, like for sure. Like, you know, I was the little kid that like swam in my swimming pool when I was like 5 years old and was like, a shark's gonna come out of that drain and get me. So I've like been scared of sharks my whole life, even in a swimming pool when I was 5. Not at 40, but at 5. But it was so beautiful to be able to, thank God I had the knowledge and the background and also my husband's good coaching, but the parallel between free diving and my breath work and the mental components of yoga, I was really able to tangibly use that to find this, like I say, superhero sense of confidence, not in a dangerous way, but lowering my heart rate, like calming my nervous system, and then using that, because you can't, you're not going to be underwater long if your nervous system is, if your mind is thinking of not happy things and you're releasing negative chemicals into the brain and blood system, and your heart and pulmonary system is on overdrive, you are not going to set yourself up for success. So it was truly being able to have the tools that I've learned from my other teachers, from you a lot, to actually use my breath to completely change my physiology, and repattern actually my brain for freediving. So I was able to have this like intense fear and be able to just quiet dive, and it was like diving in the most peaceful void, like, where there's, you go back into our conversation before we started filming of like the illusion of fear, and fear is a construct. And, so I truly believe that the breath is what allowed me to rewire the way that I think, the way that I approach things. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm curious, did you have any doubts about the breath? Like, because I know at first I did.
Yeah.
People kept trying to sell me breathing techniques and breathwork, and I'm like,
So I will say, as soon as you mammalian reflex or not, when you get your face wet, it doesn't matter. When you have that extra stimulus of like Father Ocean, and you're in the water and you realize how small, you feel like you're in the universe, like up in the Milky Way galaxy, when you're truly sitting out in the middle of the ocean with like no land around you. And you realize like how tiny you are and insignificant you are. So, right away, of course, you hit the water, wetsuit or not, you're floating, it's Florida, it's murky water. Like you're there, everything is evolutionarily going against you, right? Besides the mammalian reflex. But I remember just, intense fear. But again, thank God I had the tools at the time to recognize like, oh my God, my breath pattern, like I'm clavicular breathing, like I'm, this is not going to be, this is not going to happen at this point. So the first while I would dive and like hit like 35 seconds, and my diaphragm would be kicking. And because I was so unregulated, like, dysregulated. But over time, training, faith, good teachers, practice, it wasn't about holding my breath or how deep I could go or how long I could go. It was about, again, using the tools of meditation to calm my mind, be able to reprogram how I was breathing, where I was breathing, understand the whole science behind the type of breath I needed to be using to be diving in the first place. Knowledge is power. When I learned those things, I felt safe because I had knowledge. Before even as whatever experienced we want to think that I was, or I told myself I was, the more knowledge, the more coaching that I got, the more comfortable I was in the water. So fear, absolutely. I still, if it's been a while since I've dove, it's like anything. I still have that neuro groove in my brain that's like, shark, beep, 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 beep. Like I have to be like, it's been a while. Here we go again. Like, hi, old friend. Like, here we go. So, that's that. But I know, again, like as soon as I get in the water and I have a schedule that's allowing me to be in the water more, like I'm going to calm that down again. It's just been a while. So
I feel like our conversation keeps going back to the belief, the faith, the empowerment. And I realize, like, as we're talking, that I'm on that mission to empower people with breathing techniques, to get them to believe in it through education, to say, hey, here's what I've learned, here's what I've experimented with, here's what I've been taught, here's all of these different pieces of knowledge and application so that you can hopefully apply it too. Because I remember the first big, crazy, powerful experience I had with breath, I thought everybody has to know about this. Like why don't people know about this? Why aren't they using this? I now have a humanitarian responsibility, which might sound egoic, but I just felt like if this can do this for me.
I'm so much like you. That's how I feel too.
They have to have it. Like, I'm doing a disservice to humanity if I don't show them how to do it. And then showing them how to do that through that education, right? But so what I do, my approach is, and it sounds like how you kind of got into it as well, is we talk about gross and subtle energy, right? So the gross, the tangible is the oxygen, it's the glucose, it's the body, it's the hug, it's the things that we can feel. And then when we go into the subtleties, it's that I can't measure, like what that sound is doing. I can't totally see how the movement or the breath is moving the emotion out of my body, but like you can feel it and measure it. So when I teach my online breath technique training, I front load everything with science. So it's anatomy and physiology, and we go into the psychology and the application and all of that, and the technique and the skill. And then I have what I call like the woo. It's the energetics, it's the philosophy, it's the esoteric that I don't know how to explain as well because I don't know how to give you the graph and the data of what it is doing. But that's a long-winded way to say that as we're multifaceted, as these techniques from yoga, from sound, from breath that we're applying are coming from all different angles, I feel like eventually you come into this space that is more faith-bound, that is more, you need to believe to be connected or to stay connected, because otherwise we don't have that, looking at the graph, the needle moving kind of things that most people talk about. And when you have those experiences, when you have that aha, right? You just believe, right? So that's all to say to bring about, because the conversation that we had a little bit before we were recording, we're talking about energetics and energy and so forth. And I wanted to share that there was a moment, and because this podcast is called Breathe or Die, and it's interconnected, breath is interconnected so much to life and death, that I know you and I have connected because my father has passed and your mom has passed, and we both had relationships with our dogs when they passed, and it's
a lot of parallels.
And it's these wounds, so to speak, right? But also these connections and these
I see you.
Like these beliefs of love, of experiences of love and loss that I remember. I was 25 when I was caregiving for my dad, and he passed like right when I turned 26. And he was in a really bad state. He had a lot of things going on. And I remember sitting with him at his recliner chair because he had internal and external things going on. So his back, he had compression fracture, so he couldn't lay down. And he was having muscle spasms, and then he had a lot of stuff going on internally as well. So anyways, I'm sitting with him, and I remember just being there so helpless. And my dad was like macho man. So for him to be helpless was a big thing. And then to have his daughter sitting there was a big thing. And all of a sudden there was this wall where I kept trying to like be a caregiver or be a supporter, or like him fighting what his body wasn't able to do anymore. And you could feel we both just gave in and we both just allowed. And then there was like this sound of breath, like we weren't talking, and it just was the saddest moment, but it was also the most beautiful moment I've ever had, because I have never felt feelings that pure. Like I really hadn't. And the helplessness, highlighted the purity of the love, you know, and also the battle that we both were going through, him and his own body, and me like having to be a witness that couldn't do anything to it, but we're both helpless. Long story short, I then go into my room because I have to hear him if he needs me to help. But I also was like 25 and like didn't want to be dealing with this. So I put in headphones and I put the music just low enough so that I could hear him if he needed me, but I could also like distract myself. And then all of a sudden it was like this piercing noise, and I pulled the headphones out, and then all of a sudden I could feel like my breath was suspended. And I think what I had was like an episode of sleep paralysis where like I had like maybe dozed off, but then like, you know, and anyways, I had an out of body experience.
Yeah, and my other self is like, or who knows what else, maybe you're higher, you know, like we want to label things that we don't know with tangible things, and we call it sleep paralysis, but maybe we don't know yet what that was.
So as that's happening, I can't move, and I start screaming because I can feel myself being ripped out of my body. Now I know this is where it starts to sound like, oh, you're freaking delusional, you've lost your mind. But I'm like, no. Listen, I got pulled out of my body, and I remember being in the corner of my room looking down at my body, thinking, and I've done hallucinogens, and I remember thinking, oh, this is a bad trip. This is where you're like, you don't want to go on the ride because you know it's not going to go somewhere you want to go. And I'm fighting and I'm screaming. And then all of a sudden I start hearing voices, and they're trying to explain to me that you are not your body. And mind you, my dad's dying, right? And all I know is his body and his laugh and his voice and whatever. And they say, you are not your body. You are so much more than your body. You are so much more than you could ever comprehend. And it's like a computer trying to understand human consciousness. It's not going to happen. So you have to, and the message at the end was like, the sooner you learn this, the sooner and closer you'll get to the truth, and so on and so forth, right? So like, I'm like, let me back in my body, you know? Eventually I go into my body, I take a breath, I run to my mirror. My eyes are like just huge, right? And I'm completely white. And then I went and wrote in my journal everything they said. And that was the day, and I don't know if you've seen my handwriting, but that was the day my handwriting changed, where now I write my E's and slants, and I do, like, if you look at my handwriting before and after, it was like this downloaded message.
That's beautiful.
And then after that, I was like, I believe that our breath, our body, our consciousness is something that I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. But also, it's okay now that my dad goes because he is more than his body, and there is a consciousness left over. And like, I talk to my dad in the sun all the time. I'm like, hey, you know, like, that's just where I feel him. And then I feel my dog in the wind. Like these connected energies of the earth's breath or its heat or whatever it is. And I just feel like I wanted to share that with you because of what we had been talking about energy and belief. And I feel like had I never had that experience, I just wouldn't have the level of calling it faith, right?
Right, comes back to faith.
But also knowing, know. Like when you touch, when somebody's like, the stove is hot, and you're like, but you touch it and you have blisters, you're like, it's hot.
Yeah, it comes back to what I was saying. Like, you and I are very similar. Like, we have a lot of faith, but there's still a piece of us that's like, but show us. We're like, I believe you, but like, could you please show me? So, and that's also what I believe, coming back to like how different paths take time, and some things take longer, shorter, quicker, what you're watering. You can have faith, but your faith can waver in different areas too. And I've learned when I have utmost faith in things, I'm connected to, call it a higher vibration of abundance or whatever it is. But it floods in. When there's things where I'm like, I know this is real, but like, there is an energetic blockage. Like there's still things to this day I experience with that. But yeah, I think it keeps coming back to faith, like over and over. That seems to be like, that might be what we have to title this podcast.
Yeah, that's what we'll, as we wrap up, I always leave whoever I speak with as like total open until it's all in the can and recorded. And then I'm like, what are we going to call this? Right. So this was not what I expected the talk to go through, but I feel like I'm learning how to have less judgment and have less expectation and just let be whatever is. But if you would title this talk as something, like what do you think the message would be?
I think it would just be like, trust the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Faith in the process.
Yeah. Anything that has to do with faith and trust and just putting in the work and normalizing that, you know, keyword work, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So, but it's rewarding. Very rewarding.
It also makes me think of faith in the unknown, in the sense of how you kind of said, like, where we started our own individual journeys into yoga is we're looking for something that we don't yet know, you know?
But beautifully, you know, we'll do another podcast on this one, but we talked a little bit before we started rolling on some energetic experiences that really gave both of us a connection to that, what we in the Western world call like esoteric or woo or whatever it is, but it was like such a profound like sense of like knowing and in a real experience that is, you know, I don't know like where those messages are coming from, or these interactions, or what we want to call them, downloads, but like they're real. I have not had many, but I've had enough to be like, this is real. And it's something too where, like I talked about earlier, I think if you strive, if you push, like you want those things to happen to you, they're for sure not going to happen to you. But if you surrender and you do the work and you trust, like you were a kid that just wanted some peace and went and put headphones on in your bedroom. That was the last thing you were expecting, right?
It's so counterintuitive though, because even like I know, right? I know that what you're saying is true. And there's still a part of my rational type A brain that's like, but you have to do the work. You have to keep going. You have to strive and push, you know? And it's somehow trying to balance the art of living and breathing in the same way that you have to pull air into your lungs, but you also have to relax and just let it move out of you. And if you really think about it and you go deep into the science, you're actually not pulling the air into the lungs. It's the difference of the pressure and the volume, you know, and I think what we as instructors or educators are really trying to educate on is how to live, you know, just how to allow life to continue to move through you, but also knowing, right, having faith in the fact that we're going to be okay, even though we don't actually have control in the reins like we think we do. And that's what I feel all of us do every day of our lives is we're like, where can I gain control? Because I'm so anxious. And how do I pretend or convince myself that I am the one steering all the things, which that's not to discredit the fact that we have, you know, the choices that we make and the responsibilities and consequences of those choices, but also.
I think something I want to like hop in and say, I know when I first started, like, you know, we talk so effortlessly back and forth this whole time being like, you just have to do the work and you have to have the faith. But when I first started doing the work was the physical, let's call it the physical work of like sitting down and doing the breath work, sitting down and doing the practice, sitting down and meditating when I didn't want to. The faith comes into like, even though that was the last thing I wanted to do, I couldn't focus that day. I sat on the mat the whole time and my brain would be like, that was a waste of time. Why did I even do this? Like, that's the faith, right? I'm putting in the work, even those days that just feel, whether it's your physical practice and it just felt not good, or like you didn't want to be there, you're having an argument with a friend, or the whole time you were meditating, you were narrating, you couldn't drop in, or you don't even know what meditation is because it's a state. It's not something we do. It's a place that we reach, right? So every time you sit, you just think and talk. Like, that's where it starts. That's the faith. That's the putting in the work. And I will tell you, like, I sat there and talked to myself in a seated position for a very long time before I was able to downregulate my nervous system and find the tools that worked for me. For me, my aha moment that first connected me to that parasympathetic drop where I was like, whoa, what is this? Of course was asana and laying in shavasana at the end of class. The second one was mantra meditation, you know, japa mantra repetition ma meaning mind and tra tool, a mind tool to just concentrate and focus the mind until I was able to be so immersed in that repetitive chant and the vibration of the sound that it brought me into a state of meditation. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, like my anxiety's gone.
Yeah.
And that's where it started, and it took time. Like, I remember mid-20s, like if I would get anxiety, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to do my mantra. And I'd like walk the dog and I would just be chanting my mantra. And some days it would really help right away. And some days it would help a little. I kept doing it. And over time, it's like neuroplasticity is a real thing. You're able to rewire your brain. I was able to not always go into those deep depths, or that same neural groove over and over in that same thought. And I was able to literally rewire the way that I thought or approached a thought. And I was able to one day be able to be like, wow, I haven't thought about that in forever. Yeah. And just thinking about whatever this thought is, I don't have an emotional attachment reaction or pull to this thought anymore. Oh my gosh, I did it. Yep. And you don't realize that you have these big milestones sometimes until they're gone. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're looking back and you're like, oh yeah, like I used to have that anxiety. Yeah. Like, I forgot about that,
I always say celebrate the little wins because they really are big wins. Yeah. But like you said, like sometimes we look back, we're like, oh yeah, I was like totally different human. And now I'm on this completely, I don't want to say evolved or adapted path, but a different state, So I have one last question for you, but first tell people where they can find you, like anything in particular that, again, as we're on this path of sharing how people can be empowered and to believe that they can be empowered, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to learn from you, where can they find you?
You can find me at jessicamihm.com, and I run the High Vibration Living Yoga and Functional Movement Training. Dani is one of my amazing speakers, so yeah, you get a little bit of her too. But truly, if you're ever interested in enhancing your life on and off the mat, a lot of people are like, oh, it's not for me, I don't want to teach yoga. And I'm like, I have so many people who come in and it's not about teaching yoga. There's a lot of successful yoga teachers. I've got a lot of HVL grads teaching all over Greater Tampa Bay, Central Florida, and even in other states. But it's about becoming resilient, happy humans and truly getting this toolbox of different modalities you can use to take care of yourself and hopefully become a resilient, happy human. And it takes time, like we discussed. But I try to like illuminate and shine a light on these things that a lot of us don't know exists until somebody shows us. I had to be shown.
We don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
But as we continue to live and evolve, we learn. Mm-hmm. And again, we're on these paths of we don't know and then we learn and then we share and we don't know and we learn and we share and we keep going. So what do you think that the best lesson that you have learned up into this moment, right? In this conversation, everything that you have learned, like if there's one little nugget that if you could say, this is something I've learned, and I really hope that if you don't already believe in this, if you haven't already experienced this, I want you to know it's real, right? And also, what is maybe one nugget that you are like, I need somebody show me, because I think that that's so important is that as we share, so many people forget we still are trying to download and we're still trying to learn.
I have so many things in my head right now to answer. And I'm like, which one do I even truly? Because there's so many profound answers I could give you, but they're all in different parts of my life.
What's the simplest?
I mean, the simplest, that would be, I'm like, I have profound and I have simple. The simplest is being able to use my breath as a tool to recognize the current state my nervous system is in. As simple as that. Whether it's, a reaction to something someone did to me and being like, oh, that was interesting, or feeling lethargic and tired and, it just getting curious and like falling in love with just nerding out and recognizing what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, how I'm talking, how I'm reacting, and then seeing where this pattern is playing in my body and knowing that the pattern is happening in my body, but I have the tools to be able to change it if I wanted to.
I always say that your breath is a barometer for you to read how you're feeling, but it's also in a compass, right? For you to navigate where is it steering me, but it's also a dial and a lever that you can adjust and change to go into a different state.
It's truly a superpower, right?
Yeah. So what is something maybe that you're currently on the path searching for?
Sometimes I feel like my mother was like this a lot. My mother was a really talented artist, and she was so good at so many things, but she would always just start, like, she'd be like doing clay one day, and then she'd be, knitting this, then staining silk fabrics, and then and then it would be back to paint. So, I feel like I get that from her, and it's not something that I realized I really had from her until after she passed, and my brother and I were having a conversation in her art studio looking at all the different things she'd done. And it was just wow, she was so multifaceted. But with that, I just am so curious. I wish I had enough time to get better in every avenue that I'm working on. And as of right now, I really, really feel called to keep learning more and more with sound healing. That's where I'm at. And sound is so powerful. I think we all are in our cars or in our homes, and there's music that invoke emotions and memories, or you can put a song and it just brings tears to your eyes, or it makes you elated and happy, or it makes you want to dance. And then there's music that makes you want to run through walls or go for a jog, So it's just really learning the science behind the different frequencies and nerding out more on how to use that to, again, help people heal on a cellular level, and recognizing sound is already something that people who don't even meditate don't realize that they're being pulled into a state of concentration when they're listening to music. And I think that's why people find so much peace when they're hearing their favorite songs, because there's this unbroken wave of concentration that's leading into that state of meditation, which is leading us to that place of bliss, that place of peace, even if it's for a 3-minute song.
I have a playlist for running. I have a playlist for grieving. I have a playlist for everything. And I feel like we could talk forever, so I'm going to make this really short and sweet. But I actually just yesterday or the day before, I always run, and I used to always skateboard with music. And I was like, I'm going to not, right? I'm going to not. And it was a completely different state. And I think that I got these lulls where usually I could get the song and I'm like, oh, no, we got. And I mean, I will get such better times in breath with the pace of the sound. And I found that it was missing during this last run, in the sense that I was like, man, I just don't, where is that little nitrous dose of going forward? But also it gave me, because I felt like I needed to think more.
It's like yoga with music and without music. It's two totally different practices.
Yeah, I feel like that's a research tangent that I would love to
One pulls you in, right? There's a reason why a traditional Ashtanga Vinyasa method, there's no music, right? It's Trishtana method. The focus is on, the bandhas, the breath, and the drishti, and truly pulling your awareness inwards. Music is pulling us out. Yes, we feel the music in our cells and the vibration in our body, but we're leaving. It's not, I don't think it's really pulling us in. It's that, my favorite meditation is Alan Watts' Listen. Yeah. But the easiest way to meditate is to listen. The sounds are pulling you from all different areas.
But I would almost say the music, I feel in a lot of my experiences, yes, it can pull me out, but I feel it's just it's an external, to get me inward to be this is what's going on, because it brings a vibration to a place that I haven't been able to rattle or to
when we're talking Tibetan bowls and sound healing, where you are using or tuning forks to literally pull the vibration into the body. Absolutely.
I love it. Okay, so there will probably be follow-up to our conversation. Anything else that you want people to know?
I mean, I guess my main thing is I'm sure everybody who watches this already knows, but what a gift it is to have Dani May in our St. Pete community, but also when you talk about authentic teachers that walk the walk and live the life and do the work. I've found that it is sometimes hard to find like trusted sources, and she's the real deal, y'all.
Thank you. And the feeling is like genuinely 100% mutual. So if you are looking to learn yoga, like in all of the facets, like please check out your website. Her website will be in the comments linked below, and stay tuned to another conversation.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.